Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
Author Patrick Lencioni said the number one dysfunction of a team is a lack of trust. I think it's also one of the things that causes leaders to erode their influence is also this lack of trust. Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And Mark, today we're going to talk about how to build trust as leaders. We both know this is so important. If you don't have people that can trust you as a leader, you really are going to have a hard time going to that place of high performance that you and I always talk about. But I think there's some things we can do as leaders to build trust. It's not just a dysfunction of a team. It may be the biggest dysfunction of a leader. If you don't have people that can trust you, it's going to be really hard, and I want us to dive in there today. So everybody out there listening, welcome to the show. Mark, I'm fired up about hanging out with you.
Yeah, let me jump in. I want to add something to your introduction there. I think it's a bigger problem than most leaders want to acknowledge. I encounter my fair share of men and women who say, I know how to lead, but nobody wants to follow. Now, I don't want to say that trust is the only reason, but I think trust is one of the big reasons that you won't follow somebody who obviously has the skill set. They've got the competency. So I think this is a bigger deal than folks might think. And I would encourage our viewers and listeners, I'm not assuming this is your issue, but you may have an opportunity to serve a leader in your orbit. Maybe it's a peer. Maybe it's you could help a boss work through some of this. Maybe you could help some leaders that you're trying to develop work through this. Let's don't assume that we're just talking about somebody who doesn't lie, who doesn't cheat, who doesn't steal. Of course, we want those kind of men and women in our organization. But building trust is essential to building a following.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Mark. I want us to even take the episode today, to your point, and nice way of saying share with your friends and family, because I think there's not anybody out there who doesn't need to hear what we're about to talk about. If you're in any kind of leadership role or any kind of situation where you have influence over people, these things are going to be very helpful to you. Now, Mark, there's a list that I want us to actually go through today, and this list came from a guy that we both. You've been friends with this guy for a long time. I've met him. We did a little work together as well. Jack Lannon, your old guy, Jack. First of all, introduce we should have had Jack call in here, but introduce the audience to Jack. And then I think it'll be a springboard to this conversation. So can you tell us about Jack?
Yeah, Jack is just your classic overachiever. He's a great human being. He's a great businessman. He's a 10th degree black belt. He is a memory genius and has created resources by the same title. And he's just an all-around great human being. His organization is called People First. They're a global organization that train people how to take care of their customers and other things. So he and I became friends years and years ago. I was introduced to him through his memory content, which I have been using diligently, I would say daily, at least multiple times a week. I use his memory methods, and I have been for probably 25 years. So he's had a huge influence in my life.
Yeah, sometimes I'll use them more than one time in a day, Mark. It's fantastic stuff. And I believe Jack, I may be wrong on this, but I think he may not still, but I think he had a world record. I mean, this guy he's a maniac. I mean, it's just good stuff there. So, okay.
Yeah, the world record, I think the world record you're referencing was for breaking a block of ice that was 26 feet thick or something crazy.
It was
that
crazy.
ended up on scaffolding. I saw the
video of it. It's wild. It's wild. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Okay.
But you can do it. A 10th degree black belt.
All right. So why is Jack important for the show here? So Jack has written about 7 essentials of trust. If you're going to have trust, he would make the case these things need to be in place. And I think you and I would agree these are really important. So for anybody out there who's leading anything, if you want to build trust in your followers, I think this is a good place to start. And when I say a good place to start, I want us to start with his first one, what he calls character. And I want to just give a nod back really to the way you and I have talked about this for a long time, Mark. We talk about the iceberg as being a really good picture of leadership. If you remember the iceberg from elementary school, anyone listening, I think it was 90% of the mass is below the waterline, 10% above. Some of the things we're going to talk about today on Jack's list are above the waterline. The character piece is the below the waterline piece. And to me, Mark, this is the one that will ultimately sink your leadership if you don't have it in place. Character is so important for a leader. I'll say a couple things here. I think most people think that character implodes on a leader, meaning I did something stupid and I blew up my leadership. I'm not sure that's the way it happened. I don't think it implodes. I think it erodes. I think I have this little small area of I'm just going to overlook that, and then it grows, and I don't get back to where I'm supposed to be, and I don't make those adjustments when I'm supposed to make them. And the next thing you know, day after day after day, I'm just getting further and further away from my we'll call it our true north. And if that happens and our character erodes over time, you say it this way, Mark, or you've said it this way for years. If your heart's not right, nobody really cares about your skills or any of this other stuff that we're going to talk about. It really is a matter of our heart. And so I want you to do something here for me. Jack's given a list of integrity, humility, transparency. There's some good things under his core character traits. We would agree with all those. You said a minute ago, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. I wouldn't want anybody on our team to lie, cheat, and steal. But when we start thinking about leaders, Mark, there's a different level here, and you've written about this. And so I'd love for you to give us that list of leader, what we call heart habits, that I think any leader can not only build their character, but it's going to ultimately avalanche trust. I mean, it's going to grow in spades if we get these heart habits right, and our hearts are really right. So can you take us down that road of those heart habits?
I can, and I'll say we wrote about these in more detail in Uncommon Greatness, and this is under a leadership fundamental called Embody a Leader's Heart. And I'll just give them to you quickly because we got a lot of things we want to cover today. But the first is to hunger for wisdom. Leaders understand that they don't know it all. And the best leaders are lifelong learners. And I think that's born of this hunger for wisdom. Second, they expect the best. They have an optimistic spirit. It's really hard to get folks to follow a pessimistic leader because we're dealers in hope, right? We're trying to convince people we want to move towards a preferred future. So we need a spirit of optimism. The third heart habit is these uncommon leaders accept responsibility. They don't blame others. Now, if things go well, they're really quick to give praise and give credit. But when things go wrong on their watch, they own it. Next is they respond with courage. Everything we do, virtually everything we do as a leader requires some courage, maybe just a little bit or maybe a lot. But leaders, the best leaders, these uncommon leaders, they respond with courage. And then fifth and finally, they think others first. And this is not our natural instinct for most of us as human beings, but you can cultivate the ability to think others first. And the men and women that we would like to follow our lead really are interested in the fact whether you're a serving leader or a self-serving leader. So those heart habits are character traits that we believe make up that 90% that Randy talked about below the waterline. If your heart is not right, no one cares about your skills.
So if you want to be a leader that others want to follow, we would say start with your character. Those, again, that list Mark gave, are you teachable? Are you positive? Are you responsible? Are you courageous? Are you selfless? To me, Mark, that's a good place for me to start every day and ask myself those questions. And maybe at the end of the day, was I these things today, and make the adjustments I need to. So character is it, again, we would both say it's foundational. It is the 90%, maybe. I don't know if we want to put percentages on it, but it's a big deal. All right. So Jack goes through his list here. You'll notice they all start with C. He's he's trying to communicate and help it stick with our memory here, maybe. But character's first. He says competence is second. Why is competence so important, Mark, if we're going to build trust? I think we need to know what we're doing, right?
Well, people want their leaders to be able to lead. I think that's a fair expectation. I mean, you want your doctor to be able to practice medicine successfully. You want your attorney to be a good lawyer. You want your accountant to be able to do the things that accountants do. And if you want people to trust you as a leader, you really do need to be able to lead well. Now, if that's not a blinding flash of the obvious, we could probably stop there. But we did about 450 interviews a few years ago trying to figure out what the best employees, what we call top talent, what do they expect from their leaders? And they actually said one of the short list, they want leaders who can lead well. They want confidence, that they're not having to trade character for competence. It's like, no. They want both. They want both. And I think they deserve that.
I would say to the leader here listening, if you think about what Mark's saying here about competence, there's a good chance that you were really good at what you do for a long time. Maybe you're really good at marketing, or you're really good at communication, or you were really good at sales or whatever. And then all of a sudden you now are in a position where you're leading sales or leading marketing or leading communications. And it's almost, what's the picture I would give you? It's almost, think about your doctor. If you have a doctor, you would think that they could take, your blood pressure and listen to your heart and all those things and probably diagnose a problem. There's a difference in a doctor and a surgeon, though. If somebody's going to cut on me and take something out, or, put something in, I want them to have a different level there. And I think so many times we're good at doing our job, and then we get put into a leadership position and we are not good at being leaders. And so I want to encourage every leader listening, let's raise our competency level as leaders here. Back to Mark's point, let's make sure we're not just getting better at our technical skill, we're getting better at the job of being a leader, and that will make it better for everyone around us. So competence is there on the list. Competence so many times goes hand in hand with confidence. I love this old verse in the Bible. It talks about rejoicing as a strong man running his course. And I thought, what does that mean? Well, if I'm lining up on the finish line and I know or on the starting line, and I know I'm faster than everybody else on the starting line, I'm more prepared, I'm stronger. And I mean, it's fun to run the race, or it's almost like if you go back to school, Mark, I mean, we probably never felt this way. I didn't too many times, but if you know all the answers to the test would be a lot more fun than they are if you don't know the answers. And so I think competence actually can lead to confidence, but I do believe that leaders, to Jack's point, are not leaders, but to Jack's point, I believe followers are looking for a leader who has some confidence, but not arrogance. I don't want somebody who's just,
right.
Somebody just blowing smoke and they really there's no fire behind it. I want to make sure that my leader has competence, but that competence should lead to some confidence. And I think people really do want to follow a leader. They're going to trust a leader who's confident, that they know what they're doing. They're prepared. All right, so this next one will be a good one for us all to think about. Jack says we need to be a caring leader if we want people to trust us. Talk about the power of caring for people, Mark. I know you've got some examples of that, and I do as well.
Well, it goes back to, for me, I mean, beyond life experience, and I can affirm that those are the type men and women that in leadership, particularly, that I would want to follow, that I would trust, those that care about me as an individual. But when we started talking to all these very talented employees, they said they wanted their leader to know them as a person. And yes, they have a role. Yes, they have responsibilities. Yes, they have, goals and performance metrics. And yeah. There's the trappings of the workplace. But they said the best leaders see me as a person. And one group of those leaders we interviewed were Chick-fil-A leaders, not all of them, but some of them were. And I remember some of the stories where they said things like, my supervisor cares about my family. Well, why would you say that? Or what would make you think that they care about your family? Had a woman say, well, They told me I could go home early one night because I told them my child was sick, and they sent me home. And my leader worked my shifts for me because he knew I needed to go take care of my family. Had another young person that said their leader gave them time off because they had a big test coming up that the leader knew about, and they knew this person needed to study. And so you think about these signals that you can send to people that you actually do care about them at work and beyond work. You care about them as a human being, as a person. And I think there's something in us. We're more inclined to trust people who care about us.
It's the old, I want a boss who's adding value to my life, not just extracting value, or sees me as a person, not just as an employee. I think there's so much truth to that. And I was talking to a young leader. This woman was probably in her mid-20s, I'm guessing. She's single. I was talking to her and one of her coworkers together, and she was telling me the story this is crazy. It was Christmas Eve at 10 o'clock at night. They had been working in this business, had finished up, and she was trying to go see her parents a couple hours away. She had to drive, Christmas, trying to get there for Christmas. And she goes out to the parking lot, and she said she had a flat tire. And I'm like, and she's telling me about why she loves working in this organization she works in. And she said it was my flat tire that really kind of put it over the edge. And I'm like, what'd your flat tire have to do with it? She said, I ended up calling the owner of our company on think about this. Christmas Eve, 10 o'clock. What do? I called the owner of our company, and she said he came, and it was cold. She's telling this story's crazy. Snow. He came and he changed this tire at 10:30 on Christmas Eve. And I was on my way and got back to my parents. And she said, it's just one more example of why I will never want to leave this company. She's like, this guy just cares for us. And he told us if we ever need him to call him. And I didn't know who else do you call at 10:30 on Christmas Eve. She said, I called the owner of our company, and he was there 10 minutes later, changed the tire, and I'm on my way. And I'm like, oh my goodness. It's a lot of people would say, call me if you need me. But if the character stuff is there and all the stuff we talked about, though, do they trust you enough to call you in that moment of need? And that said a lot to me about that. So caring I can see why Jack put it on the list. It's huge.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever been in a situation personally where you didn't feel like your leader cared about you as an individual?
Yeah, I can think of some teams that I played on and some places where, I've had coaches before who were more concerned with winning than they were with, I'll say, building winners. And you know that as an athlete or a part of a team. If you're on a team and you know that you're just there to help somebody else with their agenda, it goes back to what you were saying about thinking others first. If you know your leader thinks others first and they really do have your best interest at heart. In fact, I've had some leaders that I believe, but you've been this way for me, Mark. And sometimes and I'm a pretty confident guy, but I think there's times you've believed in me, maybe even more than I did. And, you run through a wall for those people when you realize you have that kind of leader. You trust them. Let's go back to our conversation here. You trust those people who have your best interest at heart. And I think the girl in the parking lot is an example. I've got examples from my own life. You do. I think all of us know this. But when we're on the other side as leaders, let's make sure that we lean into that. And I think that'll be a challenge for some of us. We talked about this a few weeks ago, but we described how we need to value results and relationships. And we talked about how we all have a bias. If we lean toward results, the relational side, the caring side, we'll say it in the context of this conversation, it might even be harder for us. So we may have to work harder to be caring, and not just caring, empathetic, that we really share in the feelings of what's going on, and we're there with our people, and if they're hurting, we're hurting, and if they're happy, we're celebrating with them. So I think there's lots of opportunities here for us to all be more caring.
Yeah. And last thought, just a quick sidebar. I think there's something in us as humans that are able to discern some of these things we're talking about, even at a very early age. My oldest grandson, when he was 6 years old, he was on a team with a coach that probably didn't really care. I'm not quite sure why he was there. And my grandson brought it up to me. and was just so disheartened that, and he's only been playing ball for a few years, but he had never had a coach that apparently, or as it appeared to the kids, he didn't care about them. He didn't care about whether they had fun or not. He didn't care about the game. And I was trying to have a conversation with a 6-year-old about this. And I actually he was able to articulate with just a couple of questions. He said, all he cares about is whether we win or lose. That's all he cares about. And that came from a 6-year-old about his coach. So I think we can discern this early.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious to people that we are all communicating, and actually communication is Jack's next C. If we're going to build trust, we've got to communicate. And back to the point of your grandson there, we may think that when I say communication, we got to use our words and talk to people, and that is part of it, and we'll talk about that. But everything we do as leaders, Mark, it communicates something. And so whether we're even meaning to communicate something to a 6-year-old, what do they hear? Or to our person who's been on our team for 3 years, what have they seen us do? Not just say. Our actions communicate stuff. And so as I evaluate my own leadership, I have to keep asking myself, what am I communicating to the people around me? And sometimes we can discern that ourselves. Sometimes we may need to go and ask the people around us, what are we communicating in some of those, things that we're not really sure. Just put it on the table and have a conversation about it. And so many times that communication can lead to a better place, but it leads to more trust is what it does. If we talk to each other, you and I were in a meeting a few days ago, and one of the guys talked about how if there's a lack of communication, it actually can create a vacuum for suspicion to grow. And I think that's so wise. I mean, but I don't think we think about it when we're not communicating. We're not really thinking about what could the ramifications of that. So I think there's a lot here in this idea of communicating. Yeah. Listening.
Well, let me say this, and I think I'm going to say what you said with a little twist. Everything communicates. Everything communicates. And we have talked about this at length before on previous episodes. People always watch the leader. And so everything communicates. And I think for me, that's a constant and ongoing reminder. What are people learning by watching my example? I think that's, for me, a very sobering question.
I was going to say that's a challenging question, Mark. All right, so let's take your word there. People always watch the leader, and it bridges to Jack's next comment. He says that a leader, if he's going to build trust or she's going to build trust, they need consistency. It's easy to do the right thing one time or do the right thing most of the time. But if we've got leaders who are doing the right thing every time, and we know we can count on that consistency really does build trust. I'm sure you've seen and had a lot of stability through your career with leaders who do the right thing and the right thing every time. Talk about the power of consistency, Mark, in your own journey.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I can say other than think about the leaders that you admire, the leaders you look up to, the leaders that you trust or would trust. Maybe they're not even leaders that you work with, but you think that man, that woman, I believe they are trustworthy. And begin to try and tease that out and say, why would I think this leader, maybe one I've not worked with, why would I think they're trustworthy? Or do a bit of an analysis on the men and women you do work with and that you think are trustworthy. Why do I think they're trustworthy? And I don't think you can identify many attributes before you get to consistency. I don't know how you could think someone is trustworthy who is not consistent, or at least striving for it. I mean, we're human, right? We're perfect. We're flawed. We're going to make mistakes, but you can see leaders putting forth effort. You can see a consistent effort, even if you don't see a consistent outcome. A guy that you and I know tells 50 years after this happened that every day he worked, his leader came to him and thanked him at some point during his shift, thanked him for his contributions and for being there. for every shift he ever worked, when that leader was in the building, he got a personal thank you. And he still tells that story 50 years later. Well, why? Not because the leader said it once or the leader said it once a week, but because the leader was consistent. And so I'm also trying to figure out what are those things that I'm going to do my very best, as good as I can do, humanly possible. What are those things that I want to be consistent? And I think once you identify those things and begin to put them in play, people will think you're more trustworthy.
That reminds me of this last one here of commitment. Jack talks about commitment, and I was thinking about, you can't fake it for 50 years, so to speak. One of my favorite coaches through the years, I'm an old basketball coach myself. One of my favorite coaches back in the day was Coach Krzyzewski at Duke, and I just loved the way that he coached. But I read some stuff that he wrote one time, and he was talking about how excited he would get literally at practice. I mean, there would be times he would say he would get goosebumps. They'd go into a game, and he'd just have chill bumps. And here's what he said. He said, "You can't fake chill bumps. I mean, you either have them or you don't." And so this idea of commitment, Mark, I know people who are really struggling right now because they don't feel like their leader is engaged. This is a danger sign. If we're not committed as leaders, we shouldn't expect other people to be committed. There's so much power in commitment. When we say commitment as a leader, can you kind of describe that for us, Mark? More than just chill bumps. Like talk. When a leader's committed, what are we saying here?
Well, I think let's pick up on that phrase. What are we saying? I think what we're saying is clear and consistent, but what we're doing is consistent with what we're saying. I mean, again, it goes back to consistency, but I think it's a manifestation of our belief and our passion, our optimism. I mean, we actually do believe in our agency and the agency of those around us. We can actually make things happen that would not happen otherwise. And so it's contagious. I mean, if you've ever tried to follow a leader that was not committed or maybe not fully committed, again, everybody knows it's not even a mystery to those would-be followers. And so how excited am I going to be to try and accomplish something that I know my leader doesn't believe we're actually going to be successful? It makes no sense. But again, there is there's some inspiration that I think we draw from the commitment of our leaders. Let me give you a historical example. I think the year was 1519 when Cortez, with 600 men and 11 ships, landed in Mexico. And he said, "Burn the ships.
We're not going back.
We're not going back that way, for sure." And there was a commitment that was real and tangible. And I'm sure there were folks in the crowd that were a bit anxious and intimidated, but their leader said, "We're going this way and we will prevail. Burn the ships." And sometimes I think that's what it takes from leaders, is to say, no, we're actually going to do this. We're actually going to do this. And people find confidence in their leaders' passion and their leaders' commitment. They find resolve. They find persistence. They can find another gear when they know that they're following a leader that's fully committed.
Yeah, it's almost a manifestation of, we've not said it this way or talked about it before, Mark, but it's almost a manifestation of our character. I mean, that commitment, all that stuff, humility and selflessness and courage. I just read Shackleton's Endurance, the Endurance again. And that story is just wow. And there's so many great stories of leaders in battle who lead the troops, right? William Wallace and some of those. I mean, that Braveheart story. It's that mindset of, if I don't have passion and I'm not gonna, leaders go first. I mean, they live last, but they go first. And so I think I love that. I think that's so Powerful. Okay, so I got a book here, recommendation. I started with the quote today from Lencioni. I thought it'd only be fitting that I bring his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. We're not really talking team stuff today, but I want to just real quickly here. I want to share the pyramid he has. He talks about the number one dysfunction is an absence of trust, and so that's our conversation. If we don't have trust, here's what he says. Kind of build on his pyramid. I love this. He says there's going to be a fear of conflict. If we don't trust somebody, we're not going to be willing to challenge the process and to hold people accountable. And it's just so much happens when we live in fear. It causes a lack of commitment, he says. So Jack I think would resonate with that. And then we avoid accountability, and ultimately we give inattention to results. So much is on the line here, Mark. If we don't have trust, ultimately it's going to shipwreck, not Cortez would like that. It's going to shipwreck the mission. Ultimately, we're not going to achieve what we can. And so I wanted to bring this book, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Old Patrick, he writes he calls them leadership fables. I call them parables. I'm not sure they're either one, but he's the guy and I know Ken Blanchard, your co-author there on The Secret, use this format as well. But I love the power of a story, and Patrick always does a real good job. Back when he was writing fables, he did a really good job of helping connect real life situations to what we're doing. And I hope anybody that's listened today can really resonate with one or more of these and say, I need to work on this. I need to be more caring, or I need to be more consistent, or maybe more committed, or maybe my character just has some gaps in it. I think any of us, if we want to build more trust, we can take any of these ideas that we've talked about today, or any of these maybe sticking points in our leadership, and give some attention to it. And I really do believe trust can grow. And as I said a minute ago, I think of so many leaders I would literally run through a wall for. They're typically people who modeled every one of these things. I mean, there's they all knew what they were doing. They all were confident. They all were prepared, but they had that character, as you said, their heart was right. And so all that other stuff followed and made them fun leaders to follow. And if as I look back on my journey, if there are leaders who have massive gaps here, you're usually moving on as a follower. You're like, I'm not going to, we say all the time, people don't typically leave organizations. They leave leaders. And so I think there's an opportunity for all of us to make some progress here as it relates to the list. So any final thoughts here, Mark? I'll wrap us up, but you got a final thought for today? Put a bow on it for us.
Well, I think it's a lifelong pursuit. I think you and I and everyone listening, we have to earn trust. We have to become trustworthy before people will trust us. And so I'm not planning to ever quit.
Yeah, I'm with you, bro. I think trust, it does take a lifetime to build to its full potential. It can implode in a moment, but typically it erodes because we don't pay attention to these things that we talked about today. So I appreciate Jack coming up with the list. Really good stuff. I hope anybody listening will not only work on their own life and leadership as it relates to these, but again, I hope you'll share with your friends and family. Keep coming back to what we're doing here. Hopefully it's adding value to your life and leadership so you can add value to others and ultimately change your world, which is exciting for us as we think about it. All right, remember, the best leaders lead every day.